Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girlz. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girlz.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girlz. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and unfortunately, my co-host, PK, will not be joining us this evening because she's not feeling well, so we hope to see her next week. So, PK, we're sending you lots of love and light and prayers and hoping that you're feeling better this evening. And we miss you. We're left without any numerological direction for the coming week, so you're going to have to make up for it the next time you're here. I know we all want to hear what's happening because we're so close to the election and all kinds of things are popping, so can't wait for you to come back. So feel better, get well soon. So tonight I have by myself a fascinating guest. He is the author of a new book, and it is called Beware the Banshee's Cry. There it is. It's a very fascinating book, and it's about a subject that's quite terrifying because nobody wants to meet a harbinger of death. And yet we all do. Eventually, we all face the equalizer of dying, and we all have our own way of meeting that messenger. So Steven Rolfes has taken on the mission of explaining to us all about the banshees and these messengers of death. What are they? Where do they come from? What countries? I guess it's very country specific. So this is something that I am so excited to hear about. And I read through the book as quickly as I could because I'm so excited to hear more about this. Again, it's something we all face, and yet it's something nobody really wants to face. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest this evening. So Steven Rolfes is the author of many books on Ohio and Cincinnati, including Supernatural Lore of Ohio. He has been published in many magazines and also hosts a summer radio program telling ghost stories. That sounds like so much fun. So he is the author, as I mentioned, of the new book, Beware the Banshee's Cry, which is published by Llewellyn. And Stephen's here with us right now, so I'm going to bring him on the show. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to have you. You took on quite a topic here. What was it that made you want to write about this?
Well, Celtic mythology is an area that tends to be overlooked a great deal. I mean, every school child knows about the Greek and Roman myths. They know about Zeus and Apollo. They probably know about the Scandinavian Teutonic myths of Odin and Thor. But when you ask someone about Celtic mythology, everyone would just give you a blank look. And actually, this lore is incredibly rich, every bit as wide and varied as we find in other cultures. And of that, you have the most frightening, terrifying denizen of the other world, the Banshee. So it's fun time to go looking for the Banshee.
Yeah, well, and we are in spooky October for our Supernatural Girlz entire month. But again, this is a topic that a lot of people don't really want to hear about, but yet it's fascinating. And now you are not of Celtic origin, so you said
Teutonic.
Yes. So this is not something from your genealogy that you would have ever experienced, but you were drawn to it.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, other cultures have these harbingers of death as well, including us Germans. We have what is called the Weiße Frau, the white woman,
Huh?
which you can well imagine being a tall, ghostly woman dressed in white, kind of maybe like a bride, holding a candle, gliding down the hallway of an old German manor as the thunderstorm rages outside. And to see her means that someone in the family is about to leave this world.
Wow. We just got a message from one of our listeners, Joe, who said he's of Celt origin. So this is going to be of particular interest to him and other members of our audience. Yes, this is not something that you look forward to seeing, especially if you know what you're looking at. Like if you have this information about the Banshee or the White Woman in Germany or the Ikiryo in Japan, they're all there to let us know somebody's about to pass. And
It's
it is
time to
family
leave.
related, right? Is it always family related? Somebody in the family when you see a
It
Banshee?
must be someone in the family that the Banshee is connected to. They
Oh,
will not cry for anyone else,
mhm.
except there is one exception. There's always an exception with the
Right.
Banshee, but there is one, and I forget which county it's in, but she sits on a rock near a road, and sometimes she will cry out, and she's crying out for someone who is a prisoner in the workhouse.
Oh.
And I like this. This means that even the most forgotten and forlorn person, they don't leave without at least a little bit of respect of the Banshee
Mm,
saying goodbye.
that's really nice. Yeah. And also my understanding from your book is that sometimes the Banshee lets out this very attention-getting, horrifying scream, but other times it's more of a lament, right? Just a
It
soft kind of a song.
it can be two ways. Sometimes it is absolutely grating, like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
It's just been described as being like the screeching of a cat. In
Mm.
fact, there is a case from County Roscommon where, and this is a modern case, where a brother and sister, after dinner, they're sitting in the kitchen, just chit chatting away, nothing going on, and they hear this cat screeching outside. And they say, and the brother gets up and said, "Watch this." And he goes over to the door and he opens the door, looks at the dog and says, "Go get her, boy." And the dog just looks up like, "Are you out of your mind? You have any idea what's out
Yeah, forget
there?"
it.
At that point, they listen. Oh, maybe that's not a cat. And they slam the door. But sometimes that's true. It is beautiful.
Hmm.
Sometimes, even accompanied by an Irish harp. I love the sound of an
Oh.
Irish harp. And they will sing a lament, an old Irish tune. And one of the members of the family is about to leave this world, such as what happened with Dr. Keneally, who was a 19th century poet in Ireland. His little brother was lying in bed, uh, about to leave the world. He was dying, very sick. And the medical doctor was there. Some other men, friends of the family, were there. And they examined him and they said, "Well, now you just rest here. We're going to go over here and talk for a moment." So they walked across the room. And as they did, they heard this beautiful singing outside.
Hmm.
You would have thought that Kirsten Flagstead was out on the lawn.
Oh my
And
god.
and they talk to each other. Yes, he's not going to last much longer. And one of the people, obviously not from around there, said, well, I have to say, that's the most beautiful singing I've ever heard. And I've been in every concert hall in Europe, and
Wow.
I've never heard singing like that.
My
And they
goodness.
said, well, he said, no, you won't. That was a banshee. At that point, Dr. Kennelly said, oh, and he ran back to the bed, and his little brother was gone.
Oh, you
Now,
know,
I'm sorry.
no, I just wanted to know your thoughts on this, because then what is the real purpose? Is it just to warn the family so maybe they can they can say their goodbyes to the person who's ill or injured? What is the reason for this?
Once again, we come down to two different lines of thought.
Mhm.
One of them is that, yes, when it's singing and beautiful and lovely, it is an ancestor of the family who is trying to help one of her descendants pass from this world to the next to make it smooth.
Mhm.
But if it is screeching and cat-like, it is someone from the past who does not like the family, who
Oh,
hates the family, and she is just taking great delight in saying, "Ha ha ha! You're going to die. You're coming to the veil. You'll be with me." We've seen this
there we go.
number
We're
of
back.
cases in the past where lords of a castle, of a manor, took advantage of young women of the peasant class, if you'll pardon the expression. And later on, should they happen to marry this person, then that person will come back and definitely take delight in saying it's exit time.
Wow. And that's it. It's all, folks. Yeah. One of our listeners, Joe, is saying that Celts, we carved turnips, and they were way more scary. So I didn't know that. Turnips, that's quite
Yes.
intricate then to carve something that
Yeah.
small.
Pumpkins are an American
My goodness.
variation on the old Saman
Right.
traditions.
Wow. Well, I have a story I want to share with you and the listeners about meeting death. And I didn't meet a banshee, but what happened was I had 2 dogs, and one of them passed away, and I was devastated. I guess, as I always am when any pet dies, it rips my heart out. And death came to visit and said to me, your other dog is going to die soon too. And he was an older dog. We had rescued him from my mother-in-law, who was unable to care for him. And my husband and I adored this other dog as well. So I said to Death, you can't take him right now. You just can't. I can't handle it. And you can't take him. And so he said, all right. And that was the end of the conversation. And my dog, his name was Micah. He was 16 and a half years old. He lived for another 2.5 months by the grace of Death, who gave me that gift. And he passed away with me beside him. So that was my experience with death. And I was very grateful because my heart was so broken over the loss of Zoe, my other dog, that I really didn't think I could handle it if Micah was taken so close to Zoe's death. So, anyways, that was my experience.
That sounds a great deal like modern Greek folklore, not ancient Greek
Huh.
myth, but modern Greece with the character of Charon. Now, Charon, we know from ancient times, was the ferryman of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
But in modern times, he has become the Grim Reaper himself, and he would occasionally show small bits of mercy, but when it's time, and you may get a small extension for humans or dogs, I guess, and but it's definitely going to happen. And
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. I'm going to have to read up more about that mythology. It was a positive experience, as positive as it could be, and so I'm glad to get that insight from you. Thank you.
I have an interesting story that's not in the book because I read it years ago. And I mean, I've read thousands of books over the years, but it concerns a family in Massachusetts, modern family.
Uh-huh.
And one day, a German Shepherd dog that no one had ever seen, no collar or tag or anything, just came by the household and started playing with the children. And the children and the family loved it, except for the grandmother. The grandmother was Irish, and she was
Ah,
from the Emerald Isle, and she wanted nothing to do with the hund. And they loved the dog. And then one day the dog just vanished. No one knew what happened to him.
huh.
And they found out that same day that a relative in Ireland had passed away. That's when the grandmother said, "You idiots,
Oh,
that dog was a banshee."
oh my goodness. So they
I
can
think
take on an animal form. How fascinating.
there's a case from right here in Cincinnati in, I believe, 1892 of a banshee taking the form of a black cat, fitting enough, especially at Halloween.
Right.
And it went to the city hospital, and it would go into this strange screeching in a kind of a fit. And then, as soon as the fit was over, the attendant would receive word that someone on one of the wards had just died.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, and animals do know, apparently. I mean, just innately know when someone is about to pass. There was a book written by a doctor. I forget what it was. It was Making Rounds with, and then it was the cat's name. And he would make his rounds with this cat in a nursing home. And when the cat would go into someone's room and just curl up on the person's bed, having some trouble. We keep going to the dark side. So I don't know why my internet is doing something strange, but anyways, that's also fascinating with the German Shepherd, that it could take on the appearance of a dog, and then the grandmother knew that it was in fact a banshee, warning the family.
Well, she had grown up with the lore. And now that reminds me a great deal of an entity from Scandinavia back in the time of the Vikings. And it's called, and I'll probably mispronounce it, a filja. And these would sometimes take the form of animals. And there is a case from back in ancient times of an 8-year-old boy went into a house, and of course he was running. You find an 8-year-old boy that does not run somewhere. And
Right.
he comes in, and there was like an old uncle sitting there.
Huh.
Well, all of a sudden, the boy just falls over, lands smack on his face, even though there was nothing there for him to trip over. And the old man starts laughing like crazy. Well, the boy leaves angry, But later on, he asks his uncle, "Why did I trip? There was nothing there." And he said, "You did not see it. Your Vilja, in the form of a little white bear cub, had come in with you. And as soon as he saw me, he stopped right in front of you, and you tripped over him."
Oh my goodness. It's so much that we don't see. Our spectrum is so limited. And certainly it's a, I don't know. Tell me what your thoughts are on this one, because it seems like in times long ago, people were more attuned to these kinds of things. I mean, we're attuned to our iPhones, right? But we're not attuned to these things that appear and disappear from one dimension to another. It's something that we're really missing out on, even though some people can see them. Some mediums, we've had great mediums on the show, can see lots of things. But overall, it's not a part of our daily life. We've left that in the past.
Well, I think here you are getting into shamanism, and certain people are born with this power to see the spirit world, and they are trained sometimes to enhance this so that they can help their society. And this goes in a great deal if you're into the lay theory, which I certainly am, of why you have the stone circles, the standing stones, the barrows, and such throughout the Celtic world. These are what you call spirit paths. And there is even a case from Ireland of a man who built his house on a spirit path. And some of the neighbors who knew better said, "No, no, you can't do that.
Bad
You're
idea.
going to have trouble." And no, that's nonsense. That's old wives' tales. Well, wouldn't you know, he had all kinds of poltergeist activity going on in his house. He was seeing lights, he was seeing figures walking about, and of course, things were moving. Eventually, and there are photographs of this, I've seen them. He had to go out with a mallet and just bang the side of his house and made a big opening so that he is no longer blocking this spirit path or ley line, as we call them nowadays.
Wow, that's fascinating. Now, and you talk about too in your book the fairies.
Oh,
And
yes.
are the
Now,
Banshee connected to the fairies? Is that
why,
true?
that's what their name means.
Huh?
It is actually, see, the term banshee that we use, that I use simply for convenience, that's the worst word for it. There's like almost 20 other words for it, mostly variation of Banshee, she being the fairy mound, being the woman. So it means a woman of the mound, a woman of the fairy mound. And we find that there are a lot of similarities with uh, fairies. Fairy itself is not a good term, or the gentry. I prefer to call them the she, those
Oh,
who dwell in the mound. Fairy just is a euphemism meaning the fair ones. In other
mhm.
words, leave me alone.
Okay.
And banshees are often seen wearing cloaks of fairy color, very, very often green. And also you find black, white, and blood red.
Hmm. Gosh. Yeah, I was just trying to imagine how the Banshee fits in to the Fae, and because I know we've had a lot of guests on the show, talked about their experiences with the Fae, and never heard them mention the Banshee as a part of that collective. So this is all new to me, anyways.
Well, I can throw you another curveball here.
Oh, good.
Besides being just a common garden variety fairy, there is a great deal of evidence to indicate that banshees, or some banshees, are ancient goddesses, Celtic goddesses from the
Ah,
pre-Christian area who have remained in Ireland. And let me see, I should have them. Yep, got them right here. My cheat sheet. A couple of famous banshees are, one of them is called Aine. Now, Aine, if you're familiar with Celtic myth, she was the goddess of summer, of warm, beautiful days, of fertility of the land, of animals, of people. And she became connected to the Fitzgerald and the O'Cara families.
hmm.
And there's a number of myths about Aine that I have in the book. There's also the goddess Clotha, the goddess Abiel, who loves the Irish harp, Cleona, and I have an incredible story about her in the book. And one more goddess, and I bet you can guess who I'm talking about.
Who? Tell
The,
me.
the dark war death goddess Morrigan.
Morgan, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, who is actually three separate goddesses, Neman, Maka, and Balb. And they would become combined together like on a Saturday morning cartoon show and become this horrific death goddess, Morrigan. And that's how she, that is the one who appeared to the greatest Irishman who ever lived, and that would be Cuchulainn, the great warrior from ancient times. And I talk about his death in in the book. I should mention that not only do banshees cry out and screech, sometimes you will see them in running water up to their knees, and they will be washing blood-stained clothing. And the water is turning scarlet about them from all the gore coming off of the clothing. Whoever's clothes those are, that is the person who is going to die.
Oh my.
That's how it appeared. She appeared to Cuchulainn, incidentally.
Whose clothes was she washing at that point? Were they his?
They were his,
They were
yes.
his. So
Yeah.
I
He
know.
was walking towards the battle, and he had the druid Cathbad walking with him. And they saw her out in the water, and Cathbad said, "Do you see that little hound? Do you see whose clothing she's washing? That's your armor. If you go into this battle, you will not survive. Come,
Right.
we must turn around and leave." Cuchulainn run away from a battle to save his own neck. No, that beagle's not hunting. No.
Right. 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 Oh my goodness. And that was going to be my next question, because the Banshee is creating a warning for people. And I was wondering that very thing. Does it give people a chance to turn around and go in a different direction, which saves their lives?
I have never seen a case where the Banshee was thwarted. Their word is final.
So when they start washing those clothes or screeching or singing that lullaby, it's too late.
It's done for somebody in the family.
Right.
Now, there is a case that I have in the book of a family, and I don't, my notes over there, what the heck, in some county in Ireland. And this is a modern case where the family heard the Banshee. And they're sitting up and they're wondering, they can't get to sleep. Who in the family, because we're all healthy, all of our close relatives are healthy. And luckily they stayed healthy, because that night their house caught on fire. The
Oh my
Banshee,
goodness.
the Banshee
So
had warned them.
about the fire.
Yeah, if they had fallen asleep,
Oh
uh,
my
they
goodness.
would have probably all died. Yes,
Exactly. So that's a time when they were warned and they were able to save
yes,
their lives and get out of a burning house.
yeah. The only case like that I was able to find. But
Yeah, because it does seem to me the Banshee is such a powerful image and experience that it feels like there's got to be more to what the Banshee can offer. So,
I of course, we don't really know what goes on beyond the veil, but yes, I believe they do have, a function beyond just announcing death.
right.
For example, Ane, for years, way into the Christian period, was still connected with fertility, and there were rituals near the area of Laugur where they would meet on a hillside at Samhain, in fact, our modern Halloween, and all of the people would have a torch. And when the ceremony was concluded, each person would take that lit torch and run off in different directions, and they would go by all the different farms and thus take the energy from the fairy mound to these different farms so that the crops could grow and the livestock would prosper.
You know
Yes,
that yeah, there's that. See, that makes a lot of sense to me because anything that has that goddess energy, that connection to life and death, the earth, the sky, there has to be more, to this whole thing. Talk to us, if you would, about the Japanese banshee.
um, the Ikiryo, the what is essentially the ghost of a living person. Let me see. I just wrote this out today. That's Scotland and Wales. Ah, here we are. Just give me a month. I'll get this together. Yes, you read about this in the Tale of the Genji, a great classic from Japanese literature. It's not the most readable thing to a modern audience, and it's huge, but you do find the Ikiryo appearing in the pages of that great work. It is essentially the ghost of a living person. And this has been seen throughout the ages in Japan and back into the samurai era, the warring states era. And when you see this, you know the person is soon to die. And it has been related that during the Second World War, many times a family in Japan would be sitting at home one night, maybe they just finished dinner. All of a sudden, here is their son or their husband standing in the house with them, wearing his uniform and just kind of looking around. Then he vanishes.
Hmm.
At that point, the family knew that he would never come back alive.
So that was their message, and it always shows up in the form of the person who is going to pass.
In the
So,
exact form, yes.
and Japanese culture, as I understand, is very, very intertwined with the paranormal. They really
Oh,
respect it and have a deep understanding of all of this. Whereas in America, I feel people still are dismissing this a little bit, but not in Japan.
well, you have to say in modern Japan, and this is from what I've read, I've not been there myself. My family has, and I couldn't go. Oh, I wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
But modern Japan, has become very separated from its spiritual path,
Really? No.
especially with Shintoism.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many um, different aspects of the supernatural in Japan. For example, and since you took me off guard, I have absolutely no proper names, but
Okay.
they had to get rid of an entire office building because they had built it over the tomb of an ancient samurai, a very mighty samurai whose name I do not remember at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all kinds of trouble in that building.
Hmm.
And, the poltergeist activity, lights, and so on. Finally, and there were also a lot of fires that broke out mysteriously. If you read Dion Fortune, that's a symptom of a psychic attack.
Right.
Finally, they decided, okay, no, we gotta get rid of this. They tore down an entire office building and erected this beautiful Shinto temple to house the remains of this ancient samurai. And I wish I could have gone to Tokyo because I would have so
Oh,
loved to visit that place.
yes. But again, that to me says a lot about how connected some Japanese people still are to their roots with all of this, connection to the other side. And I mean, it's really sad to hear how modern Japan has moved so far away from this.
Yeah, I'm afraid they've taken after us
Yeah, that's a
in
terrible thing.
many ways. We've lost so much connection to the spiritual realm. And I guess it takes someone like Mothman to come around and remind us, hey, there's something beyond what you see right in front of you on your phone.
I'm so glad, Stephen, that you brought up Mothman is my favorite. I love Mothman. I think Mothman is just it is the bomb. I mean, I love Mothman stories. Please, you went there. You went to West
I
Virginia,
went
right?
I went to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which makes Mayberry look like a megalopolis. It's really like a two-street town. And I went to the museum. I had my picture taken in front of the statue. And my friend Doug Weiss and we made a video of our visit. And you can find that on the YouTube channel Beagle Rampant, one word. And they have a great gift shop. And of course, I had to buy stickers. I had to buy
Yes.
a shirt. John Keel's book. I bought that. I love Point Pleasant. I got to go back.
Yeah, I mean, the story is quite remarkable. Now, let me ask you your opinion, because as you know, there's a couple of opinions about Mothman. Number one, did Mothman cause this bridge to collapse, or was Mothman kind of like a banshee warning these people about the upcoming collapse of this bridge?
I believe that Mothman was like a banshee. The one who caused the bridge to collapse was a Native American chieftain called Chief Cornstalk.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Cornstalk had been involved in military activity against the white settlers and did not do too well. And he actually placed a curse
Yeah.
on this area. They built the bridge. Mothman appears in 67 or 66. And right after that, the bridge collapsed right before Christmas, a horrible tragedy. And after that, you didn't see too much of Mothman.
Oh,
Occasionally, there are sightings, but it's nothing like the big flap back in the late 60s.
Yes, and they had some very credible witnesses to Mothman, some of them with Mothman flying alongside their car and things like that. But from the accounts that I read, nobody was harmed by Mothman.
No, don't believe they were scared to death in
Yeah,
that car, a
right.
57 Chevy, which back in the 60s seems like everybody had a 57 Chevy. And they were reaching speeds up to 100 miles an hour. This thing was flying over the top, scratching into the roof of the car. So those skeptics who like to say that Mothman was just a heron or something, well, you show me a heron who's going to be flying at 100 miles an hour and scratching the heck out of a classic car.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. Well, I just love Mothman. I think it's just one of those incredible creatures. And again, it didn't harm anybody. The only story that I heard, and I don't know if you heard this one also, and I think it was Paranormal Witness, which is one of the best, in my opinion, docuseries on the paranormal. They got stories nobody else got, and they did a good job with them. But there was a couple that went to visit this area, and they went to visit an area that had, I don't wanna say mines, but it was like bunkers.
TNT area is
Yes,
what they called it. Yeah.
yes. So they went there, but they were kinda taunting Mothman. So they went in and, like, did their thing and said, "Yeah, if you're real," all that phony baloney that if I were Mothman, I wouldn't like it either. And apparently, Mothman followed them home, and some very
I
unusual
can,
things happened. Some strange things that were thrown onto their bathroom wall, and phone calls. Very strange phone calls with all kinds of static. They could never figure out where they were coming from. They ended up leaving the house, and I haven't heard about a part two other than they thought that Mothman even followed them beyond that. But the thing is, you don't poke the bear, right?
well, unless your hobby is goosing a Gila monster, no, I would not. Don't mess with it.
No, I mean, these are creatures we absolutely have no understanding of, and they obviously have, abilities that we don't have and we don't understand, so why? Why would you taunt something like that? It just didn't make any sense what they did, and I think they realized that as well, but it was too late.
Well,
So
that reminds me back to the Banshee again. Uh, Banshees, for some reason, have one possession, which is a comb. And sometimes they'll sit on a windowsill, which in Ireland is very deep, and they comb their hair while they're crying out. And
oh,
there are folk tales in Ireland concerning some drunken man who will come up behind a banshee, grab the comb, and go running off, only to be chased by the banshee. Usually, the way these tales end is that they put the family who is ready to kick his butt unendingly, put the comb in a iron tong from the fireplace and they put it underneath the door. And then all of a sudden, what the heck? And the banshee has her comb back, and she also has half of the iron tongs. And
uh-oh.
now they have a souvenir to take to the pub, show the boys down there.
Oh
You
god.
may have been told when you were a little girl that if you find a comb on the ground, don't touch it.
Oh, I have not heard that, but it makes sense.
Yes. In Ireland,
Yeah.
every little girl, even in these modern times, there's going to be a grandmother and old aunt say, don't you ever pick up a comb you find, because the
Wow.
banshee will come looking for it.
Yeah. No, you don't want that.
They
Yeah.
don't believe in finders keepers. No.
No. No. All these stories are just so fascinating, Stephen. I can see what drew you in to writing this great book. We should show everybody the book again, Beware the Banshee's Cry. And there it is. Great, great book. And I don't know, I have to say this, I don't know why, but there's a light flashing behind me. I don't know if you've seen that while we were talking. It's been going on and off. There is no light there. I just want to tell everybody there's no light back there, and all the lights in this room are just constant lights. So I have not seen this before. And Steven, I think it's because of you.
Oh, well, that's wonderful to know. Okay.
And this incredibly interesting topic that you brought to us tonight. I mean, this is just fascinating. And so you're going to go back to see Mothman.
They have tours
Uh-huh.
that actually go into the TNT area, and they show you where everything happened. Yeah, I'm definitely planning on spending a few shekels and taking that tour.
Yeah, because you're not that far away from it, are you?
Well, I'm on one side of Ohio.
Okay.
This is right across from Marion, Ohio, which is on the east side.
Okay. So it's across the state.
Yep. Then you just cross the new and hopefully much firmer bridge,
Yeah,
and you're in Point Pleasant.
yeah, exactly. Well, now wasn't there something also about the bridge that it hadn't been maintained properly also? There were some defects in the
I
bridge
would not be
construction.
surprised.
Yeah, because I think that was part of the problem, with the defects in the bridge that they didn't really find until after this tragedy occurred, and there were quite a few cars on that bridge when it
Yeah,
fell.
and it was right before Christmas. There were a lot of people who died in that tragedy, and they had gone over to Marion to do some Christmas shopping, and a lot of these presents floated up and were floating on the water. I mean, can you imagine a
Ugh,
more horrific
yeah,
sight?
and how sad, what a terrible scene for everybody to have to live with, and I know it took them a long time to get those cars out and
Yeah.
horse bodies and everything else, so it was a very, very sad thing to happen right before the Christmas holiday, just awful. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that Mothman was more in the Banshee role for that. I can't when I try to tune in to Mothman energy, I don't pick up anything that's cruel or nefarious. I really don't. Something that's more curious, a curious nature is what I find.
Now, I imagine you've read John Keel's book on that Mothman
Much better than that
prophecy.
movie, yes. Yes.
Okay, the movie we
I
not
don't
so good,
yeah.
but
Book was
John
good.
Keel's book is very detailed.
Mhm.
Also talks about a lot of mysterious men driving around, the famous MIB, the
Right.
Men in
Men in
Black.
Black. Mhm.
That I think that's pretty much where all that started, was back with Mothman.
That's interesting because the Men in Black, nobody, that's been on our show anyways, has ever come up with a clear explanation of what these Men in Black truly are, but they're very creepy
Yeah,
and pale skin and, no hair, no eyebrows. They draw them in, I guess, so sometimes they look like they have eyebrows, but they don't they don't. But then they follow people around who have these UFO experiences and try to threaten them, and I do know somebody who was threatened by a Men in Black situation where an airline pilot, this is many years ago, had given him a video that he took of a UFO with aliens that you could clearly see the aliens, and it was right outside his airplane cockpit window. So he gave the tape to my friend who was a producer. And the next thing that happened was my producer friend was visited by a van. Men in Black came out and said, if you ever air that, you will never see your son again. And he had a young son who was 8 or 9 years old. And so he took the tape and he locked it away. I don't think he's ever shown it. So
Well,
he was so afraid for his son's life, which is understandable. It's a terrible thing to be threatened like that. He's not the only one who's been threatened that way, but certainly it gives you pause if you're a father and somebody comes up to you and says something like that.
yeah, that's about as subtle as a train wreck. Yes.
Yeah, it is a train wreck waiting to happen if you air that thing. So I don't know, but all of this, it seems to have some type of a fabric where it all comes together. And you've added a really important piece with your book. So it's great. Thank you so much
Well,
for
thank
writing
you.
it, for coming on the show. What is your next book going to be?
Well, it's not been accepted by the publisher yet,
Mhm.
but I will give you a free little preview.
Please.
It is called The Twisted Road to the Borgo Pass.
Ooh,
And it's, of course, about Dracula
yes.
and how
Ah,
the book
fascinating.
came to be written. And
Oh my.
I'm getting all kinds of gestures from the other room saying, "Now, why did you just do that?" Again, I said that. Yes.
Well, hey, you know what? Dracula has never lost its appeal, ever. I mean, they
No,
keep coming out with new
never
movies.
once out of print
Never.
since 1897.
That says a
But
lot. Yes.
where it came from, you won't believe.
Oh
It
gosh.
it actually, well, I'm going to get more gestures here, but came from a volcanic explosion.
Really? Oh my
And
goodness. Well,
you gotta get the book now to find out the
I
connection.
know, my God. Well, it better get published right away. That's all I can tell you because now I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to read this. So good for you. You found another incredibly fascinating topic. That has a wide appeal. That really does.
I hope so, because
Yes.
I haven't talked to Llewellyn about it yet.
Wow. Well, I really hope Llewellyn sees the wisdom of publishing that. And if not, you should contact me and I'll put you in touch with somebody who will publish it because I think it's a fabulous idea, really. And you're a great writer. I mean, your writing is very captivating and it really drew me in to read this book. So I'm thrilled that you've come on the show tonight for Spooky October. This has been
Dankeschön.
absolutely great. Yes, yes, yes. So, please stay in touch because I want you to come back and talk about
Okay.
Dracula, and let's hear what really went on way back when and how this came to be. So, this is great. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. Again, the book is called Beware the Banshees Cry. And it is by our guest tonight, Steven Rolfes. And Stephen, thanks again. This has been fantastic. Can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a great time.
A total pleasure, really. It was such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Happy Halloween. And everybody will be back next week with another great show. Until then, we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.